Pride, everyone. Welcome to Leveraging ERGs to create an inclusive travel program and organization. My name is Emese Graham. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Manager of Flight Center Travel Group, including FCM and Corporate Traveler. Today, we're going to be talking about employee resource groups, also known as ERGs or BRGs for short. And how they can support LGBTQ+ communities within an organization. So before I introduce our fantastic panelists, I just want to get one question out of the way. What are employee resource groups? I want to turn to the Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion's definition. They say that ERGs serve to provide groups of employees with a formal structure within an organization to support their unique needs when it comes to visible or invisible identities. So they provide opportunities for development, for networking, recruitment, feedback, and lots of other benefits for both the business and the employees. So the first ERG was established by Xerox actually in the 60s. The CEO of Xerox met with Black employees to discuss how the company could better serve and support them amidst the fight for civil rights that was happening in the USA. So today, ERGs can take a lot of different forms depending on the organization, and I'm very much looking forward to diving deeper into all of this today with our panelists. Joining us for our discussion today is Herve Lavenant, who is the Managing Director of Logistics Services of United Airlines. Welcome, Herve.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And also Leo Del Rosario, Senior Vice President of Human Resources of the New York Islanders. Leo, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So glad to have you both join us. I guess I wanted to kick it off a little bit by just hearing more about your ERG's story and how we got here. Herve, do you want to start?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much, Emese. So if you will, we started in 2014 on the eve of Christmas. And what started initially was the amalgamation of two email lists of our LGBTQ employees into a group that was fully organized to, at the end of the day, positively influence United on its goals for inclusion, to increase awareness, to increase understanding around the LGBTQ issues, and to create opportunities at the end of the day, so that all in, we can support the company's reputation, but we also be a connected group of employees. So we provide these networking opportunities so that we can engage with our people, so we can help them elevate themselves at the end of the day. And that's actually also our strategy is organized in this day and age to make sure that we create tangible value for our employees. Today, we've just passed 5,000 employees this past week that belong to the BRG, which to us is a significant milestone. We're one of the largest BRGs at United in the present time.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Leah, how about you? What's your ERG story?
Yeah, so ERGs for us at the Islanders and UBS Arena is much more in its infancy stages. A lot of it is driven by just the evolution of the organizations as we are growing. UBS Arena was just opened in 2021, so we're very much a young organization, partnered with a 50-plus-year-old hockey club, and in a sport that, quite frankly, is not as diverse. And definitely opportunities recognized by the NHL to continue to diversify not only the fan base, but really hockey as a whole. We are in the process of establishing several ERGs, and it's really a grassroots effort from our employees who either have experience previously and understand the importance of these groups, not only for networking, but for personal and business development. And then our sister parent company, Oakview Group, has also been establishing employee resource groups from a more larger corporate organization, as well as seeing some with the NHL. And so we're able to leverage them as resources while we build our local programs out. So very much in the infancy stage, very exciting because it's driven by our employees who are the benefactors of having these types of opportunities. And we really can't make them successful unless we have that buy-in from our associates.
Absolutely. At FCTG, we're also kind of towards the beginning of our ERG story. I would say chapter one, we just launched 5 ERGs at the start of this year. One is for LGBTQ plus inclusion, and the others are for racial equity, gender equity, accessibility, and disability inclusion, and then also environmental justice. So the way our ERGs work is that they each have a compensated employee coordinator, an executive sponsor or 2, and of course support from myself, the DEI manager. Right now, our LGBTQ plus ERG has 56 members and growing, which we're very excited to see. I think if this is like chapter 1 of our ERG story, our preface was diversity committees. So they served kind of a similar purpose, but I would say some of the key differences were, between diversity committees and ERGs is that the committees aren't necessarily dedicated to those specific focuses in the same way as ERGs, being, focus specifically on LGBTQ equity and inclusion, for example. Also, ERGs have like very specific missions, but clear like objectives, clear results to keep us on track with those missions too. And then I think another thing that we've been doing differently, from our precursor, is that the ERGs of the coordinators of each group are compensated, right, for their time, their skills, the energy that they're dedicating to this. And I think it's such an important piece in the longevity of ERGs because they serve such important purpose in the organization's DEI strategy. I know that you both spoke to this a little bit so far, but I wanted to dive in like a bit further and just kind of ask you both, how do ERGs fit into the overall kind of DEI strategy for an organization? Leah, do you want to get us started with that?
Obviously, there's a great networking opportunity, and the larger your organization, and my experience previously, with global organizations is just, that opportunity to connect professionals within your organization, who share particular affinity groups or have an understanding of one another, be it culturally or psychologically or from a gender affinity perspective. So I think that's one. It fits into your DE&I strategy because it's really a think tank, right? Like a sharing of thought and growth and personal development. And, most pillars with a successful focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. When you think about your employees, the obvious is usually recruitment, right? But it's not the only thing. You want to talk about development, mobility, general growth, right? And then the business purpose, which I think is another great piece of ERGs that we sometimes forget about because of the cultural and social component that we're thinking about when we're focused in on these particular groups. But really, this ability to bring people together and generate business solutions, that might not have come from your usual strategy session or your typical or look, quite frankly, your less diversified strategy section. And so it isn't just the functional knowledge that helps to build these business solutions, but it becomes the cultural, social, and economic perspectives that come into play as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leah. Herve, what do you think? How do ERGs fit into an overall DEI strategy?
So I would echo what Leah said. If you look at how we've actually structured Equal, we have a national board, and that national board supports 2 really big themes. The first one are chapters. We have 9 chapters throughout the globe, and that's really the conduit to organize the event for members, to actually federate our members together. But on the other hand, we really have what I call our committees, with actually each committee as a board member that sits on our board. And those committees are architectured along the lines that Leah highlighted. So it starts with an events chair, and that chair is actually coordinating events that the national board is organizing on behalf of all members, whether these be recruiting events, whether these be pride events, whether these be fireside chats, and so on and so forth. And I think we'll dive into this a little bit later. We also have a talent chair. That talent chair is exactly here to coordinate anything that goes into recruiting, anything that goes actually into coordinating with our apprenticeship program. We have a strategic initiatives chair, again, to make sure that we're pushing our strategy forward. and that we target the initiatives that matter for employees or for prospective employees at the end of the day, if you think about it as well. And we have a communication chair because we've got to make sure that at the end of the day, we very strategically think about how it is we communicate to engage with our employees, but also to educate the company, to raise the awareness around the issues it is we have in the communities, to make sure that we bubble them up in a way that is efficient at the end of the day for the corporation, because we do a lot of advisement as well. We'll come back to that in a little bit.
Yeah, amazing. I think there's so much that you're both saying about, just being intentional about how ERGs are structured within an organization and having those, lines of accountability so clear, and really just kind of like set up across different like seniority and departments. It's so important. I think there's a principle in the disability justice community that I think applies in so many different areas across just equity in general, and that's nothing about us without us. If organizations are going to take seriously their commitments to equity and inclusion and being, a diverse and effective company, it needs to be in partnership with the people who are most impacted. We have to move forward together in dialogue, in partnership, and employee resource groups are a fantastic structure to really facilitate and create that space. Whether we're thinking about, asking ERG members to take a look at your travel program, for example, from the lens of gender, from the lens of disability, the lens of faith or ethnicity, or, just listening to people's experiences about work culture, ideas even for, policies or programs that support career growth. I know both of you were talking about development as like a really core focus for ERGs and BRGs. And also like even just tapping into ERGs for brainstorming ideas about marketing campaigns. How can we resonate with our target markets? How can we be more relevant and successful as a business? I think that strong sort of DEI strategy combines quantitative data and also the qualitative data of stories and experiences and conversations that are happening, between that diverse group of stakeholders. And that's really how we come together to be successful. When it comes to LGBTQ plus ERG specifically, how can they be set up to sort of best support members of those groups who have the most barriers to equity? So if we're thinking about like intersectional experiences of queer people of color, of disabled LGBTQ plus peoples and so on, how can ERGs support people who basically are the most equity deserving within them? Herve, do you want to start with that?
Sure, thank you. That is actually something that is near and dear to my heart. One of my best friends, a very successful officer at the Shell Corporation, and he's Black, but he's also gay. And the first thing people see when they see him is that he's Black. Very quickly, they also see that he's gay. But the one thing that marked me that we had in conversation probably 15 years ago was that whenever he's in the Black community, oftentimes people are like, yeah, you're Black, I don't want to speak gay. But when he's in the gay community, like, I want to speak gay, I don't want to speak Black. And we have got to be able to bridge that gap. And so a lot of the work we do at Equal is very intentional in partnership with the other BRGs to make sure that we create those bridges, to make sure that we educate, to make sure that we help shape the conversation at the end of the day so that people be comfortable being whom it is they want to be, regardless of color, regardless of gender, because at the end of the day, the way I've always spoken to the other BRGs and to our members is that all members are other BRG members as well because of this deep intersectionality. The LGBTQ plus community is Black, is white, is Asian, is blind to the color of people, is blind to the gender at the end of the day, because it is your inner fabric. And so a lot of that intersectionality comes into play when we do events. Our first Pride event this year was an intersectional panel around LGBTQ in the workplace, regardless of color. And that was, for us, something that was important to do, by partnering with a Black BRG to actually do that event. We've also done an International Family Day event with a family BRG. And that's how we help bridge those gaps. That's not the only way. We also realize that when we partner with the other BRGs, when we go to the health and benefits team, we're actually stronger into achieving outcomes. And when you think about where we have the most inequity, which is what we were talking about early on, right, in this question, this is actually where we have the most inequity. And we're stronger together at the end of the day. And so by partnering with other folks, we actually achieve better outcomes for people.
Absolutely. I think I've seen the same pattern at FCTG, where a lot of people who are signed up for one ERG are also members of others too. Leah, do you have any thoughts that you want to share too about intersectionality and the ERG strategy?
Yeah, I think I mean Herve hit on really just the core focus of coming at the issues of intersectionality, and I think that it's really around, at the end of the day, each of these pieces is who that person is, right? I'm not just a woman and a person of color. I'm a woman of color, right? Or, and then you're an ally, perhaps, right? So, and that's why we see, folks who are employees who understand the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and embrace it, are going to be part of multiple ERGs. And so I think that it's just a given, right? Because it's just where the interests lie and the priorities lie. And I think that the way that we support each other is not only it's through the natural process of education, right, by interaction, but also openly offering the resources, and then most importantly, the advocacy, right? And that's really the open advocacy, and it's about not trying to make someone choose or say, I'm disabled. Oh, but I'm gay. Oh no, I'm gay. But then, oh yeah, no, you are, right? You are Leah, you are Herve, you are Emese. Like it's just that. And I think the importance, and you had mentioned it, of us supporting each other is to participate, because then someone who doesn't know can't make the decision for you. Right, you talked about like participating with the travel programs or with initiatives as we look at marketing campaigns. We all have the opportunity to let that voice be combined, and I think that that's how you break down this intersection. Well, not break it down, but this is how you sort of erase that idea of intersectionality and really just look at it as how are we supporting the human, and highlighting what is special about the affinity group.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought up the idea of allyship too. I think when it comes to like LGBTQ ERGs, if we think about allies, it's like, oh, just straight cisgender people. But I think it's so important to acknowledge allyship within and across LGBTQ plus communities, because our experiences are not all the same. How can I, as a cisgender queer woman, support the trans people around me? Or how can non-disabled LGBTQ people support the disabled queer people around them? And I think those of us with any access to privilege and platform and decision-making and influence can be really intentional about using that to uplift the people in our communities with that experience of intersecting systems of oppression,
Yes.
Right? I think like an ERGs can be such a cool space of building that allyship within each community and also across, right? In terms of like partnering with different ERGs and BRGs, and using that space for education, right? Learning from each other as a space for listening and like teaming up and committing, with each other, right? Like our freedoms and our safety, yours is just as important as mine, and I'm going to stand with you, even if I'm not personally infected by, the things that you are.
From my standpoint on allyship, one of the reasons why it matters is very candidly because we are minorities. And without the sponsorship of an ally, of allies altogether, the 5%, the 7% can't aspire to get the rights it deserves and to be treated the way it wants to be treated. We will always be in the minority. It's a fact, right? But if we get the support of the majority by winning the hearts and mind, we can help shape policies that are going to benefit our minorities from the sake and from the standpoint of saying we have got to have the same human rights than other groups. And so a significant body of work around what it is we do is advocacy and education of our allies to make sure that they understand our key issues, to make sure that they are by our side for those key issues and that they support us, that they advocate on our behalf so that we can actually create tangible progress for the community.
I'll just add to that how important it is it often gets overlooked, right? And I think the power of allyship for those who come from, the place of privilege, as it's sometimes called, is so important because they have the ability to learn more, educate themselves, and then educate others, and expand the message. And I think from the perspective of the ERGs or from the DE&I, it's really helping allies to understand their role and the importance of it, and being very deliberate about the assistance or the guidance that you get from them. You really can't be successful. I mean, everybody's right. And sometimes it doesn't even matter whether you're part of an particular affinity group or not. It's really, what is your role and where's your place in that organization? And what is your level of influence? And so what does that mean, and how do you apply it to assist those who are growing or learning or developing within the organization, or not in a place where you are, or haven't had the opportunities afforded to them historically, and not necessarily by that particular company, but just because it is the nature of the workforce, that is growing and evolving. So allyship it's very important to me that allyship is always discussed. And it's important too, because I think sometimes ERGs, people believe that if you're not part of that group, you're not welcome in an ERG, and that's so the opposite of inclusion, and so why it's so important that we are deliberate about reminding folks that that if a harmonious community is something that is important to you, and growth and development of your employees is something that's important to you, then be a part of this, be an ally, and raise your voice alongside with the others.
Can you speak to a little bit about what has been happening, like what the ERG has been doing so far, and maybe some things that are coming down the pipes, especially for you, Leah? I know that you're just kind of getting started and there's so much to look forward to. Do you want to start us off with that answer?
Yeah, so we're still forming our organizations, but I think what's great is we have had a couple of opportunities. So from the team perspective, or from the sport perspective, obviously, we have particularly during the season, acknowledgements of the various heritage months, or Pride. So Pride is in June, and we're not in hockey season anymore unless we're in the Stanley Cups, which unfortunately for us this year we're not. But we have a night, and so from a public and perspective, right, we try to offer a lot of support, designated games, etc., activities out in the community. From an employee resource group perspective, those are more, we have our internal opportunities. So our women's network has already done a couple of panel and networking opportunities, like a luncheon. So different things that offer both the social, the networking, and then an education component where we have speakers from the outside, particularly women executives in the sports industry or the sports and entertainment industry. We've had already an opportunity. So the president of UBS Arena, our building and our home as the New York Islanders, is a gay female. And she's a wonderful resource and a mentor. And so we're starting to build out, those kinds of programs as well. So I think we have lots of opportunities that we're looking forward to. I'm so your program is so much further along than ours, and so I think it's always great to learn. And then particularly the things that we can scale. Sometimes it's tough because you get excited about a program that someone has, but it's a 50,000 employee company, and when you're a 200 employee company, it's not always the same, but there's always a variation of that program and guidance that we can give. So,
all right, so we have a lot of exciting programming at United Equal, and it is strategically aligned with the shares I've mentioned a little bit earlier. That wouldn't surprise anyone. So one of the first event that we've done this year was actually a international wide-body flight in partnership with Virgin Australia for World Pride in Sydney. So a 777 from United Airlines that was flown entirely by an LGBTQ crew, that was dispatched by LGBTQ dispatchers, that was handled on the ground by LGBTQ folks. And that wide-body flight on that 777, we managed to actually get a very cute koala sticker, huge size, several feet wide and high, that actually was carrying an LGBTQ flag. So for us, that was a huge marquee event because we'd never been able to do that. And as a BRG, we were the first BRG to actually have that at the end of the day. We've also partnered with NGPA, which is National Gay Pilot Association, in order to promote the LGBT cause, to shape the pilot pipeline. And so the winter warm-up in Palm Springs this past February, we've actually announced more in scholarships for future pilots than any other corporations out there. And we actually provide full scholarships, upwards of $71,000 of tuitions for aspiring pilots. When we think of the other airlines competitors that are more in the $5,000 to $10,000 mark because they're not providing full tuition. And at the end of the day, for us, that is our ability to shape the pilot pipeline in a way where down the road, our pilots will look like society looks instead of being very male, straight centric. And that is very important to us. We've also had a wide array of speaker series events. We've had a fireside chat with the Houston Pride Grand Marshal. We've had intersectionality event, like I talked a little bit earlier. We've had, whether this be with our Black BRG, with our family BRG, with a women's BRG. We've done community events. Back to school kits for LGBTQ kids. We've had obviously a lot of Pride events over the years. Last year, we supported 12 Pride events. Initially, we're going to support 14 Pride events. We just added at the last minute a 15th Pride event this year. So a lot of good work here. But the thing I'm most excited about is actually what's to come in the future. There's another BRG, which shall remain unnamed, that created a fascinating mentorship event, program, at United. And I always tell my team, if I see something I like, we're going to shamelessly pilferage it, steal it, and make it better. So we're about to launch a mentorship program at Equal, which is very enthusing for me.
Thank you both. It's so exciting to hear, how organizations are using ERGs. I can share a little bit about what FCM and corporate travel are doing. Again, we're just getting started, but so far this year, we've gotten to know each other as a group. We've done a workshop together on trans allyship. We also organized some office gatherings for Pride Month, and we're also partnering with the Accessibility ERG to spotlight and learn about LGBTQ+ mental health. So again, really speaking to the education piece, and sort of that coalition, intentionality about sharing and learning from our experiences. When we first started, we asked ERG members what they were hoping to get out of the group. Of course, again, we wanted this to be employee-led and very, bottom-up kind of, collaboration. By far, one of the biggest themes was connection. So we really wanted to be intentional about finding ways to center that with the ERG. And then another theme was education, both for people who identify as LGBTQ and also people who don't and just want to learn how to be better allies. And then, of course, the other thing, too, that came out of that survey was just how do we give back in really meaningful ways? So I'm looking forward to seeing more of all of those things, and then also seeing just how that sort of collective knowledge and lived experiences from all of our ERGs can influence our organization. What ideas can we bring together to support LGBTQ clients even, and preserve our inclusive workplace culture ourselves, things like that. So far, we've even done just like some small things in terms of like making our year-end celebration more inclusive for our employees with input from our ERG coordinators, which is really nice to see. And also create an opportunity for that celebration to give people a chance to give back to the community. We know that was something that was so important for so many people to feel, connected outside of just our organization internally. Before we wrap up, I want to give you both a chance to sort of add anything else that we didn't get a chance to speak to. Leah, is there anything else that you want to add?
Now, just one I'll share, just from the perspective of our LGBTQ plus, who hasn't created their name yet, but that ERG, one of the areas is of particular focus that the committee chair has raised and built into her intended purpose as we build out the group is what you're talking about, which is the community outreach, and particularly for that group to be a resource and a safe space, particularly for the youth in the community. Right, to feel that they have a safe space to go as they're, if they don't feel that they can have that conversation at home or at school or, within, let's say their, their athletic team, thinking about our role as a hockey club. And so I'm very excited about that opportunity that they're going to get to build, because we work as an organization so closely with our surrounding community and really trying to have those impacts. And it's just such an important component that can get left off. And so to have that be, one of their main goals as an ERG is really going to be exciting to watch them develop.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love to see that. Herve, how about you? Anything else that you want to add before we wrap up today?
Yeah, two things on my end I'd like to touch base on. The first thing is actually a lot of our successes over the years. We do a lot of advisement for United on behalf of our employees. And so if you think about recent successes, we've advised the company on what we call our appearance guidelines. Before, employees couldn't have a little subtle piercing or couldn't have a tattoo, or male employees couldn't have makeup, or non-binary employees had restrictions on what to wear. And so as we advise the company, we are breaking those barriers. And the latest one, which we're just about to launch, is that all employees on their wings will actually have their pronouns. They will have a choice to actually be able to say he, him, they, them, and so on and so forth, a wide array of pronouns that they can choose from. And that to us is a huge deal. And we're also pushing in a big way what we call a self-identification campaign. And the reason we help the EDI team do this is when you enter a corporation, you typically collect statistics around race, but you don't collect statistics around gender identification. And to us, it is one way to ensure that at the end of the day, we have representation. We do this in an anonymous way, of course. We do this in a voluntary way, of course. But we want to make sure that all employees that don't identify as straight be counted. That matters. Representation matters. And so that's a big deal for us. And then the second aspect that I wanted to bring up is simply the very controversial political environment we're in at the end of the day, right? And how do we support best our employees in that climate? And what I always say is, we cannot obviously engage in the political debate, but actions speak louder than words. And that matters because we support our employees. We love each and every single one of our employees, and our outcomes really show at the end of the day that United supports its employees regardless of gender identity, regardless of color, and that we are here at the end of the day for our employees. That to me is also the huge takeaway of the BRG, because we are here to advise the company on all those matters to make sure that we have a voice for LGBTQ plus employees.
So that's all the time that we have now, but it was time so well spent. I just want to thank you both for sharing your knowledge and your experiences here with us today, Leah and Herve. It's been a pleasure. For those of you watching, happy Pride Month. And also please keep an eye out. We'll be sharing a blog with some additional resources that you can access as well. Wherever you are on your ERG story and journey, we hope it's helpful and we hope that you've enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you very much, Emese.
Yes, thank you.
Take care, everybody.